Hi, I'm BJ, and this is the Arcane Alienist Podcast. Hey everybody, I've got some calls for this show, but I'm gonna do something a little bit. I'm gonna put them at the end, and I'm gonna do some gaming recaps up front this time out. So I've got 3 games to recap for you here. The first is going to be this week's game that I ran of my 5th edition Storm King's Thunder. So again, there'll be spoilers there if you want to or think you might play through that game is in a 5th edition game, then you might want to avoid this segment. And then I'm going to talk about a couple of games I played in this week with Karl Rodriguez, the GMologist, presents both Dungeon Crawl Classics and my first exposure to Pathfinder, 2nd edition Pathfinder. So we'll start with Storm King's Thunder. Well, that was William the Goat, the official mascot of my player's 5th edition adventuring party in Storm King's Thunder. As you recall, William the Goat is a goat that they randomly found in a giant's bag and decided to keep. And for some reason, the gods of Faerun have deemed that William the Goat is immune to danger, and monsters and evil NPCs and enemies just sort of ignore him. And he stands on the sidelines chewing things and watching and making bleeding sounds as the heroes risk their lives for glory and adventure. So what happened this time? Well, in the previous session, they had concluded their confrontation with the fire giants. They pulled one over on Duke Zalto, the head of the fire giant faction in Iron Slag. They had gone partially wanting to figure out what he's up to in creating this Vonendod construct that's designed to kill dragons. They certainly don't want the fire giants to come out on top of the new ordning once things settle into place. Of course, the ordning of giants has been disrupted because Hecaton, the king of the storm giants, has gone missing and can no longer enforce the structure that is supposed to exist there among the different factions of giants, the different species or clans or whatever you want to call them. The storm giants, fire giants, cloud giants, frost giants, hill giants, and stone giants. Anyway, so last time they had finished up their route in Iron Slag. They had managed to avenge themselves on the Drow, who turned out to be they were allies of the fire giants, but were then on the outs because they'd failed to bring Zalto the prize he wanted. So he allowed them to square off the players to square off these Drow who had killed their the leader of their party in the first session, who also happens to be the brother of one of the characters. They defeated the Drow and were allowed to go. But the other thing they had done is they had conspired with Zalto's daughter Cinderhild to steal his conch shell that the giant nobles can use to teleport to Hecaton's palace. So she had, they'd used the fight as a distraction, and she wanted to run away from home. So she stole the conch shell from her parents' chambers while everybody was focused on the fight. And then after it was all said and done, the party was allowed to leave, and she snuck out and met with them, handed over the conch shell, and then decided she was going to go with them when they went to the Storm King's palace. So she accompanies them. One of the characters attunes himself to the Calder, the warlock, Fae-Pact warlock, whose brother had been their party leader originally. Attunes himself to the conch shell and blows on it and teleports them, and they find themselves in the Maelstrom, which is the palace of the Storm King. And it is this large rock and coral palace underneath the Sea of Swords. And so even though it's underwater, there's still air. So it's not like they're submerged, although there are pools of water pretty much everywhere you go. So they find themselves in this. The chamber is empty. They emerge on top of this large rune carved in the floor, which matches a rune that is on the conch shell. They know from attuning to it that it's sort of even though it uses teleportation, it can only bring you here. It can't take you anywhere else. They had I remember they had use of an airship provided to them by the Red Dragon Clouth, and they had told those guys, "Hey, just go to Waterdeep, and we'll meet you there if we need you. We'll come find you." So then they teleport to the Maelstrom, and there's nobody there, but they hear this music coming from up the stairwell. So they go up the stairwell, and what they do is they find there are two female storm giants. One of them has got this big crab, giant crab that has coral pipes, protruding from it, and this one storm giant is playing it with some mallets, and every time she touches, kind of beats on or taps on a certain part of the crab's shell, it's functioning kind of like a pipe organ. And then the other one is singing this melodious song. There are two storm giant kind of soldiers near the stairs watching, but then gathered in audience to see this performance are four other giants: a stone giant, a frost giant, a fire giant, and a cloud giant. So they watch for a minute from the stairwell, and then the characters start to just insert themselves to move forward into the situation. The singing stops, and the storm giant who is singing is like, "Small folk, what are you doing here?" And Kalmar, who is a half drow paladin and warlock paladin multi-class, he kind of speaks up, and he's kind of BSing him a little bit about, we've come to find out about, truthfully, we've come to find out about Hecaton, and he makes up a story about how they were sent by the dragons, and the giants don't like the fact that they've mentioned the dragons. They go back and forth on why are you here? What do you want? And then immediately, though, are accused, not individually, but it's said that your kind are responsible for all this. And the two storm giant princesses who've been performing say, our mother really loved your kind. She was always a friend to your people, and she would go over to the Sword Coast, and she would visit with humans and talk to them. And they don't say humans, they say small folk, because everybody's small folk to them. And everything was fine until one day she didn't come back. And your kind murdered her. And then our father Hecaton went to find out what happened, and he never came back. So this entire crisis was perpetrated by your people. And they blame the Lord's Alliance, which is the association of the major powers in the north in Faerun. The party's like, hey, we didn't do this. We're trying to figure this out. I think you're mistaken. And Kalmar even says, I think someone in here is probably responsible. I think he's just making it up at this point, just trying to, keep them on their toes and off balance. And so finally, the sisters say, you need to speak to the regent. So they order the guards to take the party to some room that they keep where humans and dwarves and elves, small folk, the accommodations are their size. There's a chamber with beds and tables and stuff set up where they can say, go there, and we will summon you when it's time to speak to the regent. So they go to the chambers, and Kalmar sort of strikes up a conversation with the guy who's standing guard, the storm giant, and he's pretty affable. These guys are not really, they're guests. They're not completely prisoners, but they're not really on good terms. But storm giants aren't evil generally, so he's being polite and hospitable. But they understand. And this has been building every time they've encountered with giants, is that it's really clear that giants clearly think they're better than everybody else. And so these small folk are annoyances, not to be trusted, not to be counted on, not to be relied upon. But they Kalmar challenges him to roll some dice, and it winds up the giant wins. Through some sort of strange, inexplicable fact of the way D&D works, I don't know why a 20-foot giant has coinage that is sized for a human being to exchange with them, but hey, that's the way D&D works. So, but Kalmar loses a few gold pieces, but the giant tells him while they're having this conversation, while they're rolling dice, that what's happened is kind of gives a little more detail to the story that was told. The two storm giants they encountered, the princesses, are Mirren and Nim. They have a younger sister, Sarissa, who is the regent, because their Queen Neri, who again, as Mirren had told them, is a thought that giants should have good relations with humans and elves and other small folk, so she would go along the Sword Coast and visit and speak to people and just keep up with what's going on in the human world. But one day she didn't come back, and so King Hekaton sent his brother Uthor to investigate, and he found the queen dead on an island off the coast. So Hekaton gets really angry. He's going to exact revenge on the small folk, but Sarissa, his youngest daughter, counsels him to calm down, go make sure, do some investigating, ask some questions, make sure you go after the right person. I don't think that you can blame all small folk for what's happened. And so he goes to investigate, and he never returns. So they now find a body, but he's not returned. So is he dead? Is he just missing? Is someone kidnapped him? What's going on? I think the general kind of tone is most people are assuming he's dead, but that's not completely known for sure. And so they're supposed to go see Sarissa, who has been installed as the regent. He's Hekaton's youngest child. So that's kind of where they leave off. The guard says, I have to go back to my duties, so he goes back to stand guard. The party rests a little bit, and then Mirren, the Princess Mirren, comes to find them and says, comes to get them. But right before that happens, Calder, who's familiar as a blink dog, he has his blink dog pop out into the hall and scout around, and he does it just in time to see, or not really see so much as overhear Mirren talking to some other giants and catches kind of a fragment of the conversation that says, I don't care, just dispose of them when you're done. So they know something bad is about to happen. So Mirren comes and gets them and says, yes, I'm going to take you to the regent, and she will sort this mess out. They kind of know they're walking into a trap, so they walk back down the hallway towards the staircase, and there are those 4 giant nobles they had seen in attendance to the musical performance. And they're immediately set upon by these 4 giants. Mirren manages to slip away. I think one of them gets off an attack and does a little damage to her, but then she manages to get up the stairs. So they're fighting these giants, and it's pretty apparent from early on. I mean, the first round, the giants start hitting them, and they have not taken damage like this from anybody they fought. They fought a few giants, but they've only fought them 1 or 2 giants at a time, never a group of them like this. And so pretty clearly early on, it's like, oh, this is not going to be, these guys can definitely kill us. I mean, they're 9th level at this point, but the giants do pretty tremendous damage. In fact, the cloud giant uses his telekinesis to shove the paladin of the group, Kane, into a pool of water and start trying to drown him. He's got him held in a telekinetic grasp. And the other giants are more engaged in melee, but they use some pretty smart tactics. Kalmar, I mentioned, is a half-drow paladin warlock. He envelops himself in darkness, but he has witch sight, so he can see through the darkness, so he's not at any disadvantage to walk up to the edge of his globe of darkness and attack, but anybody trying to attack him is at disadvantage, so he managed to go pretty good toe-to-toe with this fire giant. He does get hit a couple times. Mostly he's hurt because before Mirren leaves, she summons some lightning on top of him, which, she can't see him, but she knows of the general vicinity of where he's at, and so she just drops a lightning into his globe of darkness and fries him. But then she bolts. no pun intended. She leaves, and and goes on with the fire giant, and they do. It's back and forth. They're taking damage, but Calder has a necklace of fireballs that he picked up somewhere, so he uses a couple of those beads and softens up the giants. Dor, who is a goblin barbarian, and Halfgrim, who is a dwarven forge cleric, then kind of pounce first on the stone giant, and they manage to take him out and then move on to the frost giant. And so the party came through this alive, and then, of course, towards the end, their cleric starts healing them up and getting them in healthy. They could not survive probably a second round of that without a rest. So they are starting to face some things, where it's not so easy, and they're getting roughed up, and they've got to be careful about managing their resources, because now they're in a castle full of powerful giants. They don't kill it. At last, they've got the fire giant on the ropes, and make an offer for it to surrender or to explain. Why are you ambushing us? The fire giant says, "Well, Mirren told us that you were here to assassinate the regent, and so we were obliged to." And they say, "No, we're not here to do that. She's lying to you." And the fire giant had kind of earlier in their discussions kind of picked up on why it's pretty clear the fire giant's very concerned about dragons. You've mentioned dragons a couple times. What are you talking about? And so it manages to de-escalate the situation where the fire giant agrees, I need to take you to the regent and let her sort all this out. So that's where that game ended. And so we will pick up next time. It was a lot of fun. I think, again, they took a lot of damage. Nobody ever got close to dying, but I don't think it's because there's a problem with the game. I know a lot of people talk about 5th edition, particularly as you get at higher levels. I really think, again, this was the second time they've had a fight with a significant foe, where it was the fact that I have experienced players who know how to use good tactics, and it's not like they came out unscathed, but in the end they prevailed because they just made cool decisions. And, of course, once again, Calder turned his blink dog into a T-Rex with a polymorph spell, which I think is always funny. And then Halfgrim did a good job using his spells to bolster the party and to keep everything moving slowly. And Kalmar, the half-drow, excellent use of his abilities and his weapons. So they've also wisely, leading up to this point in the game, equipped themselves with giant slaying weapons every time they could manage to get their hands on one. So that certainly helps. And we had 2 players absent. So I had to run Kane, the paladin, and Dor, the barbarian, as NPCs this time. Anyway, but good tactics won the day for this group. It was a lot of fun. I gave everybody inspiration just because they did a really good job with both the role playing through the situations and tactically dealing with the combat challenge that was put in front of them. So we will pick up next time and see what happens when they meet Sarissa, the regent of the storm giants. Okay, well, this week I also got to play Pathfinder 2nd Edition for the first time, courtesy of Karl Rodriguez of the GMologist Presents. Jason Connerly, host of the Nerds RPG Variety Cast, also joined as a player. He's playing a goblin archer. Another player who doesn't podcast or have any kind of public persona is with us as a dwarf fighter. And then I decided to play a human wizard. And originally his background was as an herbalist. I thought I'd be kind of a secondary healer with natural healing and stuff. But we're playing the Abomination Vaults Adventure Path, and when I looked at the player's guide for that, excuse me, there's a background called Eldritch Anatomist, which is looking at somebody who's interested in this kind of obscure science of flesh shaping, which is, I think, kind of the way that you create abominations and things like that. But it also means you're kind of a trained physician, and that this is just maybe something you want to study out of curiosity. You don't necessarily have to be a mad scientist, although you could easily see how this could become like a Dr. Frankenstein character. So I switched to that background right before we started. And that's kind of why he's interested in exploring these ruins that have been presented in this region of the world. And so his name is Dr. Eleazar, the human wizard. And what I found with Pathfinder 2e is character building is a little different. You have to pay attention. It's not that difficult if you're used to building any kind of 3rd edition, 4th edition, 5th edition, or Pathfinder 1 characters. It's not that big of a leap. And as we played in the game and I used my spells, it played, I think, not too much differently than a wizard in other kind of modern D20 systems. I did enjoy, and I thought Pathfinder 2 has, I like its action economy where you just have 3 actions. There's no bonus action or quick action or swift action, or you just have 3 actions. You can use an action to move. Or you can use all 3 actions to move up to 3 times your speed, or you can use your action to attack, and you can attack 3 times. Each time you subsequent attack, you take a penalty. Most of the spells that you have are 2 actions, so you can move and cast a spell, or you can cast a spell and make a basic weapon attack. But it's just to me seemed like a very clean way to manage the action economy. So I really liked it in that regard. And most of the other stuff, as far as skill checks and casting spells and actually making attacks and rolling damage, is pretty typical D20 kind of stuff. So, but I had a lot of fun. We start up outside this abandoned lighthouse, and we're going to explore the ruins. And we get into a fight with some little mischievous fey creatures. I think they're called mephlets. And we fought off 2 or 3 groups of them as we explore through the gatehouse and then across the drawbridge into this kind of, I don't know if it's a castle or a keep or structure. But one of them that we injured pretty bad keeps running away and alerting another group till finally we hear him yelling, boss, they're here, come help. And it's like, maybe we need to get out of here because we're starting to take some damage. And it wasn't a really long session, but it was a good introductory session. I think I found for my character what was most effective was my electric arc cantrip, which just you can zap one person and then it jumps over to a second person if you want to. So I was pretty much a ranged attacker for most of this. Although some of my lore skills came in handy for us to kind of sort out what these creatures were and what was going on and things like that. We encountered them in a moat house, and then they're up in the rafters among these cobwebs. The dwarf character sets the cobwebs on fire. One of them tries to escape out a window, and Jason's character, the goblin archer, just basically shoots him in the backside as he's trying to get out the window and kills him. And then we crossed the drawbridge, which almost collapsed on us, and had to jump over it and barely made it. I did. Everybody else crossed it just fine. And then a couple of other fights inside this ruined building, and then we thought we need to go back to town. There are 2 other players that weren't able to make it, so we decided to go back to town to regroup. Also knowing from kind of my metagame perspective, that's probably where we'll meet these other 2 characters next time and go back to explore the ruins further. But I had a really good time. As always, Karl is a great game master, and Jason's a lot of fun to play with. As was the other player, and I'm sure we'll I've played with the other 2 guys that should be joining us. It's Arlen Walker of Pelham's Wasteland podcast, and the 3rd player who also joins us in our Dungeon Crawl Classics games that we play on every other Saturday. So I really like Pathfinder 2. I would be happy to play in that with friends anytime. Maybe remains to be seen whether I would adopt it. You get to a certain point, you can only learn so many game systems. So I don't know if I'm at a place right now where I want to learn a whole new game system as a GM, but I could see myself doing it at some point in the future. Anyway, I really enjoyed it, and I'll report out when we play again in a couple weeks. Hey, this next segment segment I recorded and realized I should have put a spoiler warning at the first, because when we played Dungeon Crawl Classics, we played Tomb of the Scourge Kings, which is I hope I wrote that down right. Tomb of the Savage Kings. I can't read my own handwriting, which was just recently released as part of Free RPG Day. So this may be a DCC adventure that people have picked up, or maybe their game master has picked up and haven't run yet, but may. So just fair warning. This has got some spoilers because we played through the whole thing in one session for Tomb of the Savage Kings from Dungeon Crawl Classics. You might want to skip this segment if you don't want that spoiled for you. Saturday morning, I got to play with in Dungeon Crawl Classics. Again, this is a game also run by Karl Rodriguez of the GMologist Presents. One of our regular players couldn't make it, so we decided to run a one-shot and treat it as a flashback for a few of our earlier characters. So my character, Burnfried the Cleric, and Jason Connerly's character, Idris the Necromancer, and then Otto the Dwarf, who's played by another one of the players. We sort of had this sort of, supposedly earlier in our career, and about halfway through the adventure, the session, I thought, we kind of were introduced to Idris in our second session, so and none of us knew him. So how is this possible? Well, we figured out a solution for that I'll get to in a minute. But so the premise is that we were hired by this noblewoman to track down her kidnapped sister, who had been brought to this pyramid out in the jungle, and she sent her halfling servant along with us to guide us to the location. And I believe the belief was, I may be misremembering this. I think the belief, the way that it was pitched to us was, they thought maybe this thieves guild had kidnapped her. The local thieves guild, El Gato, who was known for also torturing people with cats. The joke was that they doused people in cream and the cats lick them to death. Anyway, so we start off really at the base of this pyramid trying to figure out a way in. So it's in a clearing in the jungle. On one side there is a statue of a baboon-headed woman. It's about 12 feet tall, so it's got this, obviously already got this Egyptian theme going on. And there are hieroglyphs around the base. Jason's character Idris is able to read the hieroglyphs that says basically, the moon. Anyone who the moon shines on this pyramid, and anybody who disrupts it, will be cursed forever with awful things happening to them. I think it mentions their, the sands filling their lungs and their eyes turning to meat and rotting with maggots and other horrible things. So we kind of look around and can't find any obvious entrance to the lair, or to the pyramid. Jason casts Fly on and he rolls well enough, because this is Dungeon Crawl Classics. The higher you roll, the more powerful the spell effect is, that he can let himself and one other person fly. So he adds that to my character. We fly around looking for an entrance and don't find one. But we do find a tiny opening in the top of the pyramid on the opposite side from where we started. And it's a shaft. It's about 9 inches in diameter, so nobody can fit down it. None of us can anyway. And it's clear that this is where the moon is maybe coming into the pyramid, we think. That's what we assume anyway. And that this is the thing that we're not supposed to block in terms of the moon's rays. And so we look around a little bit farther, a little bit farther, a little bit farther. And finally it occurs to me that maybe we need to reflect moonlight somewhere. I think everybody realizes that the answer has got to be somewhere near that statue. But finally occurred to me to try to use my a shield to reflect moonlight onto the base of the pyramid from the back of the statue. And that actually is what does it. Then a magical door appears. So we go into the actually, let me back up. It wasn't quite that clever on my part. I cast detect magic, and then I could see that there's some sort of magical effect on the side of the pyramid that we deduce must be a door. Then we think to reflect moonlight onto it, and that's what actually causes the door to open. So we walk into up this ramp into a room. We can see the shaft where the light would be coming through from the other side. And there are several doors. We also note one place where there's not a door, but it looks like there should be a door. It's got some red ichor of some kind splattered around it. And again, with detect magic, I can see the outline of what should be it's probably some other kind of magical door. So we trace the outline with chalk, and we'll come back to that. Let's look at some of these other open doors. So we explore some of the other chambers. In the first one, we find a sarcophagus that has been opened, and there's a 9-foot tall mummy heaped in the corner. The sarcophagus has already been opened and disturbed. And then, harkening back to our original adventure where we're exploring this red mound, and there's some ancient people in there, including a similar statued, preserved figure, which is where our warrior who wasn't with us this time recovered his thrice cursed sword, our sword of the Moon Kings, and this similarly had a moon-like theme in this pyramid. So we're looking around and trying to figure out what's going on, and it's pretty clear that there's a damaged scroll which Idris is able to identify as a magic missile scroll that's been partially used and partially damaged, but it's still functional. And it's clear that the mummy has been zapped with magic missiles and then also stabbed. So I think, well, there's got to probably two people then, some sort of spellcaster and some sort of somebody who's wielding weapons that have attacked this thing. And the more we start putting pieces together, the more fidgety the halfling that is accompanying us starts to get. And I think it becomes pretty clear that he knows more than he's letting on. But he continues to kind of be very ingratiating to us and complimentary of us and just really laying it on thick. So I was like, quit lying to us. Tell us what's going on. And he continues to do that. So we decide to we take everything away from him. He tries to run when we finally, the jig is up. But I was able to cast paralysis and hit him with it before he could get out the door. So while he's paralyzed, we rifle through his pockets, and then we basically strip him down to his skivvies and tie him up, put him in the sarcophagus, and close the door and threaten to leave him there when the spell wears off. He panics while he's in the sarcophagus and confesses everything, that he and his mistress are members of the Thief Guild. They had come here before to plunder the pyramid, and they awoke something, some awfully undead thing, and they were able to escape, but then it appears to have followed them home and kidnapped his mistress's sister and brought her back here. And so that's what we're really supposed to be doing. We are legitimately supposed to be returning the kidnapped sister, but this is she didn't disappear for the reasons they told us initially. We also find some hieroglyphs that depict it's supposed to be this prince figure, sparring with his brother, kind of indicating he's a great warrior of some kind. And then the next image shows that he's married and having a family. And then in a third one, there's a figure whose name has been erased. It's called the Unnamed Priest, who's receiving an omen to beware of this demonic jackal. And then the final panel depicts him kind of watching on as a group of what they call sand people, which seem a little smaller than him, and this bride of his are fighting the demon jackal. And then finally, she's the fifth panel shows her being prepared for her funeral because she's dead. and this unnamed priest is being bound into a sarcophagus for eternal punishment, very much reminiscent of the Mummy, the movie The Mummy. But he's being punished because he failed to save this woman. One thing that is looking at these hieroglyphs as Idris is interpreting them, he notes is that his people, who are kind of a nomadic Bedouin type people, is probably the closest analogy, are sometimes called the people of the sand or the sand people. So if these are truly his people in this picture, clearly, they're smaller. They're not small. They're human sized, and this race of people who have created these mummies are just huge. They're 8-9 feet tall. So we go into another room. There are 4 sarcophagus, which appear to be concubines who have been mummified, along with and entombed along with their master. We open 2 of the sarcophagi and get some treasure out of each one. A necklace and a golden ceremonial dagger. And then the third one, the cover depicts a woman, but also with baboons, kind of indicate maybe she had some pet baboons. We open that, and the mummy itself doesn't come to life, but the embalmed baboons that are in there with her come to life, and they attack. And at that point, things went really south for me. I continued to fail any roles to heal people, any roles to turn unholy, I just kept accumulating disfavor with my deity to the point that at some point I had to stop for 10 minutes and just utter chants and prayers to be able to continue with the adventure. But Idris was able to use his one of his fire spells and Otto the dwarf, his weapons to dispatch these undead baboons without me. And then the fourth sarcophagus just again had another mummy with some treasure in it. It actually had a magic ring, which the Otto the dwarf put on, and it was some sort of ring that provides protection against suffocation and choking and things like that, which I guess would be useful in an Egyptian-themed culture where you might face sandstorms and things like that. So we exit there. We investigate one other open chamber. We find there's this baboon-faced edifice carved into the wall, and you could walk through its mouth into another room, but we're like, it's clearly a trap. Let's not go in there just yet. Although I did have the idea that since 2 of us were still flying, because Jason had rolled so well, we were both flying for hours. Maybe one of us could fly through it without touching anything and not set off the trap, but that never came to fruition. We continue to kind of explore this area, and we do find the tomb of what we assume to be the mummy or the main monster. It had been referred to both by our Wimple, who was the halfling who was with us, and in the hieroglyphs as a shrouded figure that they put some kind of death shroud on him that cursed him and turned him into this monster that he is. So we find the tomb with the lid open, and it's empty, and there's this reddish liquid. It's not blood, but it's pooled in and around the sarcophagus. And then we kind of figure out this must be the shroud. They kind of put this thing on him. And it may be required to go through this magic door. Like that is required to open this magic door we'd kind of made note of but not gone through yet. So I decided to take a torch and make the halfling do it, since he's kind of ticked us all off by being duplicitous. Stick it in the ichor and soak it so we can maybe use it kind of like a paintbrush or something to wipe on the wall, hopefully to open this magic door. But as soon as he touches it, it ripples. And Karl described it as kind of like the T-1000 from Terminator 2. It starts to take on this humanoid form and rise up out of the sarcophagus. So I don't think I'm dead. I don't think I managed to do anything useful in this fight either. But Idris used the magic missile scroll he had found, and again, between the efforts of everybody else, the thing is ultimately defeated. And there are kind of red footsteps going out of the room back towards that magical door. So as soon as we approach it, the idea was to paint it with the the stuff or to smear it with the stuff and see if that one. But as soon as we just get close to it with the stuff on the end of a stick, it opens. And in the room, we see there's a pool of water. There's a woman, obviously the woman we've come to rescue, in the water. Her wrists have been cut and she's bleeding out. But she's sort of connected to this set of scales that look sort of like the scales of Thoth. And then the mummy creature, I forget what name it had, Karis, that was its name, Karis, is looming over her. And so... we don't even stop to, hey, what's going on? Stop that. It's just the fight's on. We roll initiative. I continued to fail everything I tried to do. But Otto and Icarus are able to defeat him. And I thought, well, the very least I could do is save this woman we're here to rescue from dying. So I go and pull her out of the water and try to heal her, and that roll fails. I get even more disfavor from my deity, and I had an opportunity to maybe, but they defeat this thing in the meantime. Well, when he goes, suddenly there's this swirling like sandstorm like effect in the room, and the demon jackal we had seen in the carvings on the wall appears. And I thought, well, the last time something like's happened, I cast banishment and the spell and able to send this away. And surely I'm due a good roll. But also this woman, we could tell that if I don't heal her right now, she's going to die. So I elected to go ahead and at this point, everybody else is down to to a couple of hit points, except for me, because I'd been in the back trying to cast spells futilely. But I went ahead and decided to try to heal her. That didn't work. But Jason was able, with his character, to blind the thing with a spell, so it wasn't able to really hit anybody as we tried to extract ourselves from the room. So I failed to save her, but they do manage to turn the tide after this thing is blinded and defeated again defeated. And then the figures that had been just kind of watching idly in the picture as the sand people, which apparently it represents us as we've kind of started to figure out, appear, but we defeat the thing before they can get involved, and they kind of nod appreciatively to us, and then the room goes back to normal. So in a last-ditch effort to not make it a total waste, because the little halfling guy has started to, oh my gosh, you let her die, you failed. I did called on my deity, which you can do in Dungeon Crawl Classics for a miracle. And I'd managed to roll high enough to get it to work. And so I beseeched the deity to, don't let this woman die. We've done everything we can to save her. And it worked. So she coughs and opens her eyes and she's alive. So we did manage to save her. And as a result, the hieroglyphs and the images we had seen changed to show, instead of this guy being cursed to a life of eternal undeath, it shows that these two are wed and that they go on to rule their land happily ever after. But we had decided a little bit earlier that, hey, how are we going to deal with the fact that this is supposed to be kind of a flashback prequel, and we don't know Idris because he showed up during the second session of our initial adventure, and none of us recognized him. Well, Idris had said, he has a spell where he can alter people's memories. And he said, we thought, well, what if it would be funny if he casts that spell and miscasts it and it erases our memory of him? And he's kind of a BSer anyway. That's kind of the way Jason plays him. So it would be in character for him to do that and then just pretend it never happened. And then the next time he encounters us, he's like, oh, who are you? So he was going to, what Jason decided was he's going to cast this on, when it turns out that the woman we're rescuing, I think her name is Isabel, is dead. He's going to cast it on the halfling so that he doesn't know that we're responsible for her death. But he miscasts it, and it alters the memory of Otto and my character, Bernfried. But at the same time, I had managed to beseech the deity for this miracle and get her to come back to life. So we decided it was sort of us, our two characters not paying attention to what the other one is doing. And so just as I bring her back to life, I'm like, All right, well, that's kind of, hey, Idris, what do you, oh, and then he, wipes our memories of the encounter, and we kind of wander off out of the temple in a stupor. So that'll suffice to kind of hand wave why we didn't recognize each other later. It was a lot of fun. It was a great adventure, and as always, Karl's a great GM, and these guys are Jason and the other guys that play in this game are great people to play with. So we're going to play this game again, I guess, in a couple of weeks. So it's a good way to spend a Saturday morning. If you're going to have to get up, you might as well do it for something you love. And that is the latest on Dungeon Crawl Classics. Okay, let's take some calls. These first couple of calls are from Jason of the Nerds RPG Variety Cast, talking about the origins of the word shoot. But before that, we've got a call on his thoughts about spell slots. So here we go. Take it away, Jason.
Hey, BJ, Jason here, just calling in on Daniel's call about Fantasy Magic and your comments on spell slots. I think spell slots are a workable and versatile system, or they can be, and I think it's really newbie friendly. I think for new players, spell slots are really easy to understand. You could even write spells down on cards, and they could flip those cards over when they cast them for the day, that kind of thing. I like the idea of allowing you to save lower level spells and higher level slots, and even to split up those higher level slots. So a third level spell slot could be used for one third level spell, or maybe two first level spells, something like that. But I think it's a totally workable system. It's not my favorite system, but I think it's definitely a very serviceable system and very newbie friendly. Like I say, especially if you do something like those spell cards and hand them out to players, or you could even do that virtually. But it's really easy to grok and to understand.
Okay, origin of the word shoot, as far as the act of shooting. According to a quick internet search in the car in the rain, so I'm not going to do a deep internet search, but it looks like the quick internet search showed the 1530s, and definitely D&D, if we include the pole arms and the different things in the book, 1530s is not out of the era of D&D. I'd be interested to go back. I also saw a reference to Old Norse as far as the act of shooting, but I'm not positive. I'd have to sit down and uninterrupted look at the internet instead of you doing it as a distraction. But yeah, so I think shoot is older maybe than we think. Probably correspond to like the crossbow, or maybe with catapults. I don't know. Without looking it up further, I don't know. But it looks like it's an older term than we're thinking it is.
Hey, Jason, I think, on the spell slots, yeah, you're right. It's an easy system for remembering how to do things. I think it lacks a certain flexibility. And as you're talking about, though, being able to use higher level spell slots for lower level spells, or maybe even break them down into smaller or lower level spell slots or something like that, which is what the spell points option in 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons does. Gives it a little more flexibility there. But yeah, I think, like I said before, I've come to appreciate spell slots as not the only way to approach Magic, but it is a good, easy way of organizing things for games, particularly for beginners. So I would agree with you there. I kind of like the points system, or some system where you can sacrifice a higher level spell slot for multiple lower level, things like that, just to make it a little more flexible so that it's not quite as rigid as the original presentation of spell slots was in older versions of D&D. But, everybody has different preferences on that. I poked around on the internet looking for the origin of the word shoot, and I could only find it in the sense of a projectile, references to the 15th century, which again there it's like, well, by the mid 15th century, where I'm seeing kind of the citation, we already have early firearms on the battlefield with an arquebus and things like that. So the question is that kind of like fire? When you're talking about firing a projectile at somebody, does that enter our lexicon as far as missile weapons along with firearms, the same way the word fire is, or does it go earlier and also refer to bows and crossbows? I think any more now, and probably even beginning around that time, you might have used the word shoot to refer to bows and crossbows, but is that only because it's been adopted from the introduction of firearms? I don't know. That's not my area of expertise. I'd love to hear from somebody who could clarify that for us in a more definitive way. But yeah, anyway. All right, now these next set of calls are about the idea of reputation. We've got one more call from Jason, and then a call from Daniel Norton of the Bandits Keep.
As far as reputation, yeah, you would have to, it'd be a little more work on the DM, because you would have to track their reputation in each town or settlement, especially if you're doing a points of light campaign where the towns don't have a lot of contact with each other. But that also opens up, that trading party comes from town A to town B, and they bring news and gossip and all, so you might have a decent reputation, and then next time you come, somebody's come from another town and really, tarred your reputation, right? Or if it's a thieves guild or some kind of big organization, it'll be slow traveling, but eventually that word might get down. So I don't think it'd be that much more work on the DM if you're already tracking those kind of things. But reputation would be a little more work on the DM, but I think it would be neat. And I think people want a verisimilitude in their games, I think there's a way to do it.
Hey BJ, Daniel from Bandits Keep. I'm calling in without all the information, which is, of course, standard here. But you guys are talking about Jason Connerly, about the reputation. I haven't heard the review of the game yet. It made me think that, reputation could be good or bad, right? Like, if you are unscrupulous, perhaps you have a reputation that is strong amongst those of your type, right? So that could be kind of interesting. And I actually like the idea of reputation. I've really been, tossing it around in my head a bit. So this was a good little conversation you guys are having, because in my sword and sorcery hack that I'm working on, that's going to be important. Without reputation, you have essentially no level. If you are nobody, you are nobody. So I wonder if you could do that to D&D, tie levels into reputation. If you want to be, this is more of a thought experiment. If you want to go up in level in D&D, you need to be known, because otherwise nobody knows who you are. So you're just nobody. So, interesting. It makes me wonder if that's not actually already implied in 5th edition, because if you look at the tiers of player, or I forget what they call it, I think they call it tiers. At first they talk about how you're local guys doing something, and then you're handling regional threats, then you're saving the world or whatever, depending on the level breakdown that you're at, what tier you're at, the tiers of play. So is there an implication in there that when you are 10th level and you are taking care of, threats that threaten an entire country, that you're known, and that's why people are asking you or calling upon you to do that? Or are you just some unknown person that somehow is saving the country or the world or the village, for that matter? So it's kind of an interesting thing, because I would imagine that you would be known if you had done all these great deeds that would get you to the level that you were at. But I guess if all you did was go into dungeons and slay monsters and nobody found out about it, then not.
I think both Jason and Daniel are making pretty good points there. And I think when I kind of weave together what both of you are talking about, yeah, I think to Daniel's point, it is implied right there in the player's handbook. It tells you kind of the scope of your heroics at the different tiers, starting from kind of the local level to more the regional level, to sort of at the 4th tier, you're perhaps defending an entire kingdom, or maybe even an entire continent or section of the world. And then at that last tier, you're facing cosmic multiverse level threats, at least in 5th edition. But this is one of those things where I actually listened to, interestingly enough, just today listened to a podcast from WebDM, and it's one of their Patreon podcasts. So unfortunately, it's not open to everybody who's not a Patreon. But in that, Jonathan Pruitt and Jim Davis are talking about what seems to be maybe coming with this new expansion of 5th edition to coincide with the 50th anniversary of D&D. The new the Wild Beyond the Witchlight campaign offers non-combat solutions. You can finish the entire campaign primarily through diplomacy and negotiation and intrigue. But they've commented several times on their show about how 5th edition kind of left exploration and social aspects of the game completely up to the DM without being real prescriptive, which is good. But sometimes it's good to have procedures and things to fall back on if you're just not sure what to do. You can always, it's easier to have a rule and decide you're going to throw it out or amend it than to have no rule or procedure on how to handle something. I mean, some DMs can figure it out and some can't, but and this notoriety thing is one of those things that's implied certainly in the tiers of play, but there's nothing. There are no suggestions in the player's handbook or the Dungeon Master's Guide. I mean, there are some scattered throughout, but there's no coherent like here's a default way to handle this. You take it or leave it, but at least we've thought out something to give you some advice on that. But I think you're talking about, yeah, definitely how would you handle that? Because in a rule set, and Jason's making a good point about, well, what if you're in a setting where there's distance and lack of communication between the settlements? You'd be a stranger everywhere you went, or your reputation can only travel so far because people just don't travel that much. So that might be one thing you'd want to assess in the setting. But I guess you guys are actually, between the two of you, giving me kind of an idea that might be worth trying out, which is as the game master, you would need to keep a list of maybe the settlements that people visit, and you would have a notoriety, some kind of notoriety score or rating that is just how well known you are in this town or this region. So that's just whether you're known, and then you would also have to have a reputation score, which is, well, now, fame can be a good thing or a bad thing. What are you known for? Are you known for being a hero or a reliable person or someone who's done something interesting or really cool? Or are you known for villainy and the last time you were here, you really caused problems for everybody and everybody hates you? So you'd have to have a one aspect, which is notoriety, and one aspect, which is reputation. But you would have I think it would be pretty easy if you kind of come up with a little measure for that or a little metric for that, to just keep a list of everywhere the person visits. And then maybe an idea, if you do something really awesome that improves your standing in a certain place, maybe that might give you a little bit of a bonus or a tweak to your score in places within a certain distance. Or by contrast, if you do something really heinous or awful, that word gets out at least regionally. I mean, that would be up to kind of how you've set up the flow of communication and where people go back and forth. I think you could model that, and I certainly not. I don't think that's an original idea. I think other game systems have done that, but that is something that I think a lot of times D&D encourages or asks for. But I don't know that any version of the game has ever actually done that, other than the Baldur's Gate video game. There's some kind of reputation score in there that you don't see, but it's there. And if you engage in evil behavior within the walls of settlements, you get, the next time you show up, the town guard comes after you, and you find that people the NPCs aren't as friendly. So, but I don't know if any of the paper and pencil tabletop versions of D&D have ever handled that explicitly. I mean, I could be corrected if somebody knows of that. Please let me know. I know 3rd edition had, I think it was in the Player's Handbook 2, they had something where you could join organizations and get a kind of a rating on how closely or how well affiliated and well regarded you are within an organization you belong to, and that conveyed certain benefits. But I don't know if this general kind of, your reputation as a hero or a villain or a person who does great deeds or whatever. I don't know if they've ever tackled that in the way I think most of us are thinking about it. So, but I don't think it would be hard. I want to keep working on that, because that's a really interesting idea, and I'd like to hear more thoughts from anybody else who wants to contribute to that. That's a pretty cool concept. So, and we're all referencing is that honor thing in the Green Knight, where the idea is that you've got an endpoint to your quest, and you have to reach that quest with a certain amount of honor. If you get too much dishonor, then you drop off the quest. Of course, that's a conceit of the game. I don't think you could do that in D&D. But it does give an example of a way you can have someone's honor and dishonor moving up and down based on their actions. But But yeah, I think we're off on a completely different topic now when we're talking about what Jason and Daniel are talking about there. Anyway, good thoughts. Enjoy the conversation. I hope we keep it going. And now we're going to turn to, we've got another call from Daniel, and then some thoughts from Karl Rodriguez on the problem of Palpatine's throne room, or the monster at the middle of the maze.
Not at all in an attempt to start things up. This is Daniel from Bandits Keep, listening to the middle of Joe's call about the Palpatine thing, and he said, no, it's a bad trope because things are in a certain place. And then he said he doesn't use wandering monsters because he likes to put things in a certain place.
Oh, shots fired. Well, Joe, give us a call and let us know what you think about that.
Oh man, I guess I have a response to the Emperor Palpatine in his throne room thing. One of the best situations where I got the party good was they attacked a fortified location, and I didn't have the bad guys attack him in waves because that would be dumb. In fact, the bad guys fell back to the quote-unquote throne room and then set up a defensive barricade and proceeded to kick the shit out of the players. So this was for a game of D&D 5e, and actually I think I perma-killed a character, but they were brought back by a magic item. But it was a game of D&D 5e, and it was actually one of the Pathfinder Adventure Pass that I adapted for 5e. And I think after that they're like, well, I don't think your conversion is working. No, it had nothing to do with my conversion. It had to do totally with my fallback tactics and defensive positions that I set up for the bad guys, who then proceeded to beat the shit out of the characters, for the most part. And if Jason Connerly hears this, or even Joe Richter hears this, they're going to go, oh, I guess Karl has gone soft, because I hear all these tales where he beat people up and TPK'd them, but how come he's never done that to us? Maybe you guys are smarter players? I don't know, maybe you haven't figured you guys out yet. I know Jeff still plays in my games, even though he was subject to some of those. Oh, sorry, redact that. One of my friends, whose name I will not say, plays in a lot of my games, and he still plays, and he still remembers the time when I got him with the droids in Star Wars, because they didn't think that the droids were the enemy, and they were, which was kind of funny. So anyway, no, I don't know. I think you guys are more savvy players, I can tell, and I think that's a good thing. And I don't know. Maybe I've just become too nice. Maybe y'all are right. I just hang it up. Hang it up next time, the next game, next year, 5 years, whatever.
Wow, everybody's calling out Joe Richter. I'm sure we'll get a call from Joe before the next episode airs. Yeah, Karl, I play with a lot of very experienced gamers, and I don't pull punches. They know the game. They've mastered the system, and they're pretty good at using tactics. And part of me as a DM, I think, well, I got to ramp up there's that thing of I got to ramp up the danger to make this a challenge versus, well, why do you want to punish a player for playing well? Let them enjoy the fact that they outsmarted the situation and came through. So yeah, I don't. Now I've been playing with you for a few weeks in a couple games, and I'll talk about those games in this episode. When people play clever, I don't think since you've ever pulled punches. It's just I think most of us, when you get with a group of people who've been playing D&D and similar games for 20, 30 or more years, they're not going to make rookie mistakes a lot of times. And you can roll in the open and let the dice fall where they lie. And still those experienced gamers, even when they're playing first and second level characters, are probably more likely to get out alive. So, I wouldn't feel bad about that. But yeah, that is, that's what happened in my my old school game where they did lose a player. But I think that has more to do with the fact that you're just more likely to die in old school essentials and BX at first level. But they had kind of one foray into this hobgoblin lair and then retreated because they had done pretty well, but they were down on hit points and out of spells and stuff. Well, when they came back, the hobgoblins had fortified all the entrances to their lair. and they lost a player trying to in a frontal assault trying to get that. So I think it's okay for the DM to use tactics as long as if you're playing stupid characters that a kind of monster that isn't capable of tactics, and then maybe not. But when you're playing orcs and hobgoblins and intelligent creatures that are military or war is a big part of their culture, of course they're gonna have tactics, and going to utilize them, and they're not going to just stand around and wait for somebody to come up and pick a fight. So I don't think you've gone soft at all, but I'm certainly enjoying your game mastering style. So anyway, thanks for the call, Karl. That was Karl Rodriguez of the GMologist Presents. Also thanks to Jason of the Nerds RPG Variety Cast and Daniel of Bandits Keep. Be sure and check out their podcasts. Also available here on Anchor, and then also Daniel has a couple of YouTube channels. One where he talks about his ideas about kind of game design and how to build dungeons and various topics like that, and then another one where he does live play with his home gaming groups. So check all that stuff out. Show him some appreciation for the content they put together. And that's it for this episode of The Arcane Alienist. I want to thank Dave Bone for the cover art that I use for the episodes. Check out ironseer.com. And the music is Come and Get It by Scott Holmes Music. Thank you for listening. Give me a call sometime through the Anchor app or at the Anchor website. And I'll be back in the future with another episode.